with a note to thank Arthur, not just for being our Zoom master again tonight, but also for his work on getting that council job description together. And Jack, I know you contributed to that, and Mike, I think you did as well. And I thought it looked pretty good. We'll be talking about the October council meeting, of which that was a piece, later on in this meeting. But I just want to start with a thank you because I thought it came out pretty well. And Arthur, consider yourself
Excellent.
duly
Yeah.
thanked for taking the
Yeah, I
initiative.
thought it was, when I first saw the idea, I thought it was a good idea because we really don't have any description of what it's like to be on the council, and it was a missing piece of the action.
That's what we thought. And so thank you for getting it done. And thanks everybody for joining in. And Jack, I want to thank you again on behalf of the entire committee for our administrative tutorial on ChatGPT at your house. That was not only educational, but really fun.
Yeah.
And thank you. This stuff should be fun.
Thanks for
And
coming.
well, it was a treat. I also want to ask, as we go through administrative items, for Mike and Jack and Alexa and actually anybody, to note down any questions that the committee might have for our attorney, Ron Bolt. And we'll talk about that later on too, but just as we get started, if there's a question that you think we might want to talk to Ron about, just take a note now and we can consolidate any questions later. Does that make sense to people?
Yep.
Sure.
All right, so, and let's see. First item is to check the AI software to help record this meeting. Jack, I see you've got your note taker up here. Excellent. And Arthur and Michael Silliman, do we have AI working tonight on the office Zoom or not?
I don't think so.
So I do have a transcript here that I can see. Everyone that's saying anything is popping up in the transcript for me. So it's maybe that's working. I've played with the settings a little bit within Zoom, but I do think their AI feature is a little
Okay, here
wonky.
comes Elizabeth. I got her. Okay, it says recording and taking notes. Oh, that's on Jack's. Okay.
That's Jack's, yeah. So we'll see. The AI feature via Zoom was working up through the July meetings. I think it's when it suddenly stopped working and we weren't able to turn it on anymore. So I'm not sure why that is, and I still haven't figured it out on actual within the Zoom settings. But as Jack pointed out, the transcript is already there. It's within YouTube once this recording gets uploaded.
Okay, Jack, did you want to add to that?
No, we're good to go.
Okay, ready to rock and roll. All right, the first item on our administrative piece here is to approve the minutes from the October 8th committee meeting. Elizabeth, not only do you get a welcome, you get a thank you for the usual fine job on the minutes. Did anybody have any additions or amendments to the minutes? If no, can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
All right. We have universal approval of the minutes. And again, thanks, Elizabeth.
Welcome.
The next item is ChatGPT to help prepare committee documents. And again, we'll come back to that in the action items lower down. But I did want to say that it's helpful. It's not by itself sufficient, is my take on it. Does that sound right to people? Yeah. I like learning about it. I think I'm having fun playing with it. And again, thank you to Jack. Any other comments? Yeah. Alexa? I can't hear you, Alexa.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect. That's great. Thanks.
Jack or anyone, can you recommend a tutorial like YouTube or something? So I could bring myself up to speed on ChatGPT. Like
I don't have any to recommend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a ton of like great intro. Yeah, I don't have anything specific though.
I was hoping you might. Thanks.
I wanted to say something to Jack. I hope you didn't get offended by my response when I.
Oh no, it was factually correct response.
No, it's just that I had a little, I don't know how you would express it, but you know what I mean? I had a little double take there when I saw it, and then I just saw that the meeting nicely ended, and and the entire discussion that we had, and you know, I was there, so I know that there was a discussion on our election committee proposals. And so, you know, I was a little bit alarmed, but it wasn't anything personal. It was just to say that, you know, it wasn't there. So we got to,
Oh no,
but what
I
was
knew
there
too.
was just fine.
Yeah, I prompted it to give me more detail and it still left it out. So I figured I would just
Strange.
share it. But yeah, it's I
Why
think
do you suppose that could, I mean, you
I have
must
no
have more
idea.
experience.
No,
No
I
idea.
have no idea.
Okay.
I think
All right.
To Marty's point, it's like it's a useful tool, but it's not sufficient on its
Okay.
own.
Yeah, the verb I was looking for was spooked. That's how
How
I felt.
Halloweeny. Totally Halloweeny. And again, Jack,
Okay.
it's lovely to have an IT wizard, you know,
But
on our team.
I am impressed having seen what it can do at the tutorial that you gave us, where you sort of like fed into the grinder 4 or 5 different source documents and then gave it 2 or 3, you know, recipe instructions like please prepare me an outline and a short summary or something. And out it came, and it was, you know, it was quite good. So, you know, I'm all for seeing how we can make our minutes 1 page instead of 2.
All for efficiency. Amen.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on that? Okay. Reviewing the committee's duties and work schedules. Our main items coming up are we have to prepare the December report to the council with the recommended election regs for 2026. The council did approve the election schedule that we had sent forward, and that there were no changes in that. So that piece is done. And the other big chunk that needs to be done at the December meeting is to actually finalize our recommendations about the election rules. And I don't see many changes in the election rules, but there's some stuff that it does. Tonight's meeting is about discussing the election regs and really is a conversational meeting. We don't need to make many regulatory decisions on the actual document, the regulatory document tonight. We'll do that on at our December meeting. But that's sort of the next big deliverable for us is to give the council at the December council meeting the recommendations from our committee on the regs for the 2026 election. So that's the biggie. And then in January, we start with the voter roll verification process, and that takes 2 months and onward from there. Any questions about our work schedule and then what else we need to do? There are some other things in there, but those are the big things. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, again, our work schedule was spelled out last month in the meeting packet.
Right.
Anybody?
No.
Okay. My job as your chair is to just keep this train on the track, and I will try my best to do that. Okay. Do we have any residents here tonight? I don't see any. Unless we call Jack.
What is Jack's Fathom note taker? Oh,
Jack, you want to explain what you've got there?
It's just an AI note taker. It'll
okay.
transcribe and give us a summary, and we'll see how it does relative to our last YouTube transcript to ChatGPT attempt.
Onward and upward, right?
Keep an eye on it, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
This specific tool is a favorite of people I work with and me.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we take that seriously. And Elizabeth, one other thing that I said at the beginning of the meeting is that as we go through tonight's meeting, we should each of us jot down any questions we might want to ask our village attorney, Ron Bolt. Just so we can consolidate those and we'll talk about that later. But if you have a question that you think, oh, I'd like to ask Ron Bolt this or that, jot it down as we go through the meeting, and we'll do that administratively, consolidate them later. Okay, I think we're up to the action items. Yes?
Okay.
First thing is to finalize the draft position description and budget for the voter verification contractor. As I think you all know, at the October meeting, the council sort of nominally approved that we should, come back to them with some kind of revised proposal. And I put together a first draft and ran it by everybody, and then some of you had good comments back. Everybody had good comments. And so you have a revised version in your meeting packet tonight. And one thing we do need to vote on this evening is to approve that revised PD and budget to submit to the council at the November council meeting, which is coming up in basically 2 weeks.
Right.
Any changes on that? Do y'all have a chance to look at that? This is the revised thing. It's in our meeting packet for tonight, the revised position description.
Looks good. I know Elizabeth had a couple of comments about some of the hours, at least on one of the things, and I assume there was some adjustment for that. I didn't go through and actually verify that.
Elizabeth, do you want to speak to that?
Well, no, there wasn't an adjustment because Marty explained
Oh, okay.
in a detail that I can't remember all the ins and outs, but that it actually took that long to do all of this contacting, including, you know, calling and going to residents
All right.
to verify voting status based
Okay.
on, you know, past practice.
Okay.
So but that was quite a large number, Marty. You said there were, I
We
mean, there were
had
quite a
more,
few
more
names.
than 100, 130, 140.
Yeah, I mean,
names
that's
got a check.
amazing to me.
Yeah, it was a
that-
lot of turnover last year in the village.
Right.
And, you know, I got to give Michael Silliman some kudos here because I think he's now doing a much better job of keeping the village office list up to speed.
Uh-huh.
And that should really cut down on the number of phone calls we have to make. The thing about phone calls is you think, oh, well, I can do 10 an hour, 6 minutes per person. But people aren't home, you have to call them back. So it's not just one call
Yeah.
per person. And then if you
Exactly.
can't get them with a second or third try, you send them an email and they don't respond to that. They go on the list of, okay, they need to get the letter saying, you know, hello, are you still here? And there's
Okay.
all kinds of ins and outs. Like we have some residents who are still residents but are on State Department assignments elsewhere. And
Mhm.
we need to get a confirmation from them that they still are absentee owners but still
Yeah.
want the right to vote. So there's lots of detail in there. And of course, the contractor would, we hope, help a lot with the phone calls. We wouldn't make the contractor go knock on doors, but
Mhm.
we would certainly maybe have them help us send emails and call, and then keep, of course, a you know, detailed documented logbook of what you got when you called so and so.
Yeah, I
And
didn't mean to actually, initiate a discussion here. I don't have any questions or adjustments to make to this. I'm satisfied with it.
Yeah.
okay, thank you. It took Larry Watson and I last year did the voter roll verification tasks while Elizabeth and Naomi worked on getting ready for the forum, which is in April. And we were doing this all in March. The voter roll was January, February, March. And it took Larry and me 40 hours, and we're both pretty efficient people. It took, you know, at least 40 hours for us to verify some of the names, and we still ended up with 80 some people that we couldn't verify, despite all our efforts in, you know, in trying to reach them. So it was time
Marty,
consuming.
I have one question is if it turns out that the person spends less time, I mean, is that final rate fixed or is that variable depending on what they bill? So
Oh,
if he bills,
yeah,
if
it'd be what they bill.
if he bills 10 hours instead of 16 or something, then, right,
We
you're not locked into the 2,800, right? Or
No,
how
it's
does it
not, it's
work?
not a fixed rate contract.
Okay, fine.
And the $70 an hour is just based on what Julian Lampier
Reports.
charged, you know,
Yeah.
back in 2024. And he did a
Okay.
great job, Michael. But as you know, he did way more than 40 hours, I think. He certainly had a lot to help us clean up there, and he
Okay.
did a great job. So, do you think, Michael, that Julian might be interested in doing it again this year with us on a smaller scale, since things are much better shape now?
I do not know the answer to that. My understanding is he got married last weekend, so I'm not sure what his life is looking like these days.
Oh,
I'll tell him we all say congratulations.
Will
That's
do
cool.
next time I see him.
Yep, yep. And you know, I certainly would recommend him again to the committee because I thought he was very thorough and worked with us well, and you know, just was really did a good job. So, all right, we're back to business here. The committee needs to vote tonight whether this draft position description and budget for the voter verification contractor is okay the way the document is and ready for us to send to the council in November. All right, so we need a motion to approve the PD and draft budget. Alexa, do you have a question?
Time to me.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I didn't hear you.
motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of going forward with this PD and budget, please say aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
All right, unanimously approved. Right, moving on, the mail vote contract with Electric. Mark, any changes needed for 2026? And Michael, thank you for sending us the signed version from last year. And in the packet for this meeting tonight, I included both the signed version and the markup that last year's committee did. And Michael, you said in an email to us that you were gonna deal this year with the note that we had on the third element about clarifying that sentence that, we don't get a runoff election for free. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I just remember this conversation that the election committee from last year had about that third item, that it wasn't quite clear what that meant. It said the price will be the same, but does that mean it'll be the same amount again, or does that mean the fixed price
Yeah.
is fixed price? Which is my understanding, but it's their template contract, so maybe I can just, before I sign it, have a little clarity on that.
Yeah, that would be helpful because, I have to say I've done a lot of contracts. I'm sure many other people here too have done a lot of contracts. And when you have a vague contract, it can come back and bite us, even though it's their template, it's their document. But ambiguity in contracts is generally kind of a risky thing for a village because then that makes the contract sometimes unenforceable. And so I would really, really urge you, Michael, to clarify that. And I think last year's
Oh.
committee gave you some language that you could use maybe.
all it would need is shall remain at 9,510 for the runoff election. If the idea here is that it's the same price for a second time around, right?
Right. The
To
same
make it
charge will be
clear.
applied a second time for the runoff.
Mhm.
It is theoretically possible for the election committee to do a mail runoff ourselves without going through Electec, but I'm not going to suggest that because I have done all kinds of elections in my life of service, and it's a whole lot easier to have Electec run the elections. If you're going to do it by mail, and our regulations require us to do the runoff by mail, and so I think that we would have to bite the bullet and pay another $9,000 for a runoff election if that came up.
Marty, can I just mention one restraint here with the contract, as well as I'm only approved or have the authority to approve contracts on under $10,000
Right.
through this process. If the contract is over $10,000, including, even maybe add-on prices and stuff, then I actually need to go through the public bidding process. The public bidding process is lengthy and frustrating. You have to
Yes.
post it on the state website
Sure.
and get
Yeah.
multiple bidders and go through a bidding process, and the council has to vote on it. That's set in our charter, actually, that limit of $10,000. One of
Yeah.
the things that I might want to recommend to the council at some point is to raise that limit. That limit was set when we were founded, and that doesn't adjust for inflation.
1985 is when that dates from.
So I actually
Holy
have
cow.
less spending power every single year as inflation.
Yeah.
What's $10,000 in 1985 adjusted for inflation?
Well,
I'm
I'm an
gonna look it up.
economist, but I would say it ought to be at least double that now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
know,
so that's something that maybe we can address that when we have some time or something. But for now, the goal of this contract is to keep it under $10,000, and to do that, we have already pulled out the pieces that I can pay for separately, like postage is not included in this contract. The mail tracking platform through LetterTrack that you and Larry Wasson found a couple years ago, Marty, that is paid for by the village separately to keep this under $10,000. So it's
Yeah.
it's 9,500 and something at this point. But I'm cautious of that because at some point, Electec is one of the only providers that provides the services for towns our size. They're the only ones that are working in Montgomery County that I'm aware of providing the service. So we don't want to lose them.
Absolutely right.
And if they raise their prices on us, even 10%, we will be up a creek without a paddle, as they say.
Can I just ask a procedural question? How it works? Do you send them a draft and say, are you interested? As is, as it's written for the amount that it was last year, 9,510?
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
9,999?
Absolutely. Yep, that's exactly what I'm gonna do.
Oh, and then they'll say
I'm
whether,
gonna call Electech and say, "Hey, we're doing it again. Are you still good for it? And
okay,
are you still gonna be under $10,000?" So I've also communicated with them already and told them about this restriction.
okay,
Yeah.
So
Just to inform you, I just looked at the Consumer Price Index. Today is roughly 3 times higher than
Yeah.
1985.
Wow.
That up
Actually,
to,
Sounds
yeah.
more like it.
almost exactly 3 times higher.
Well,
uh,
I guess
for-
2.5. And so, yeah, Arthur, you know, I
2.95.
think that this committee can unofficially, I mean, obviously the council's charter change on that $10,000 limit is up to the council. That's not election committee business per se. But I think that you have a clear consensus from the election committee, unless somebody objects, to the council, Alexa and Arthur, to please take this forward and rescue Michael from the
Right.
$1985
Yeah.
limit.
And since the next time we change it will likely be in 2065, maybe we build in some
Yeah.
buffer.
That's a good point, Jack.
Well,
the
I know we've discussed it at some point, but it seems to have slipped by.
well, and I know some of the other municipalities are looking at it now and doing the same thing. There's price controls, of course, so it makes sense why it's written in there. But this is why you actually don't want that much stuff in the charter. You want most of it to be in your policies because policies are way easier to change. Changing the charter, as some of you probably know, that's this. We're institute. Our powers come from the state, so changing a charter at the state level requires a lot of hoops you have to jump through, including posting it in twice in a daily newspaper in your area that is for sale, not for gift. So
Hmm.
the only paper that qualifies in Montgomery County is the Washington Post. The Washington Post charges us lots of money to post things in their ads, which are buried in the smallest print you've ever seen in the back of it.
I've seen those. Yeah, for sure.
So it's a cumbersome process. So that's probably why we haven't done it, and I'm not looking forward to doing it now. But for now, we're just going to keep it under $10,000. But that is something here. If there's a provision that it's actually going to be $20,000 and not $10,000, we might have a problem, or might need to separate that out into a separate contract. There's some workarounds, but that's just
Yeah,
something I'm aware of.
the workaround of doing a separate contract if we had to have a runoff,
Right.
it seems to me the way to go here, and that is doable. Mike, did you want to add something? Mike
No,
Stillings?
I was going to say the same thing. If this is actually an $18,000 contract or a $19,000 contract, then you just maybe take the runoff thing out. If you happen to have a runoff election, you strike another contract. So,
Mhm.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments, suggestions? Okay, we will
Well-
leave it in, go ahead, Elizabeth.
no, I was gonna say, what did you want to do with this tonight? Just, see if there are any changes to the text that need to be made, Marty? When does this have to be finalized?
Well, we basically give Michael Silliman, our
Mhm.
advice, and we've been doing that tonight. So Michael, I assume you took notes.
Okay,
And
so it's,
I think that the only vote we need from the committee is that we concur with the notes from last year's committee, and ask Michael to proceed to
yeah.
negotiate
so
what he
it's-
can.
it's basically updating the dates and then the question on the dollar amount.
Mhm. So if we
Right.
could have a motion to proceed based on the comments from last year's committee and so direct Michael to negotiate with the Eclectic this year. Can someone move that?
sure. So moved.
All right.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous again. So Michael Silliman, if you have any questions about any of this, obviously give me a holler. But I think do what you can, do your best with our blessing. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying where you can clarify. I still am at the very end of that, question again. This might be a question for Ron. Where it says, in the witness whereof, and again, this is elect text language. Signed by this very last item, in witness whereof, signed by its president or designee, and has caused these presents to be signed by its officers. And of course, it wasn't signed by the officers. And that's a question for Ron, because if the contract requires their officers, Electex officers, to sign this and they didn't sign it, is that a valid contract? Is it an enforceable contract? So that goes on my questions for Ron list. And again, Michael, you can ask Ron that. You see what I'm saying? Because the only person who ever signs it is Matt Lilly, who's wonderful, a great guy. But if the contract says his officers have to sign it too, and they don't, where does that leave Martin's Editions?
So, wait, your understanding of that contract language is that every person that works for Electech would need to sign it?
No, it says their officers will sign it. So,
By officers, you mean like whoever's authorizing the contract, which is Matt Lilly, I thought.
but it says their officers, signed by its officers, signed by its president or designate. That's Matt
Or
Lilly.
designate, right.
And it doesn't say or other officers. It says and other officers. So that there's a vice president or a treasurer. I
But
mean,
I
I don't
think
know
it
the
all
other
depends, what is meant by officers? I think that is the question for Ron.
Right.
Sure.
And do more officers than just Matt Lilly have to sign it? Because if so, it might be unenforceable, and that leaves us up the creek, which is not where we want to be.
I can check with Ron, but I'm pretty sure we can just edit that language in the draft contract this year to say or, and that way Matt Lilly is an officer of Electech, and that qualifies it. Yeah.
Exactly. That's an easy fix. Okay. And we've approved your permission to go ahead and follow up on the notes from last year. Okay. All right. Onward and upward. Discuss the results of the October council meeting, including the status of the three-part proposal, the access to the village attorney, and other issues. Let's start with the status of the three-part proposal. And we mentioned that at the beginning of this meeting that, thank you, Art, for taking the lead to get that position description for the council done. And I think we all agreed that that's in good shape. And that's a council document, but the committee will be glad to have it. So the only thing the committee needs to do tonight on that piece, the first item of the three-part proposal, is, are we happy with it? Do we have any further changes to suggest to Arthur on the council job description? Anybody?
Oh, I thought it looked just fine. That I know there was some some discussion about whether to put the date in there so that it would be, what was the term Michael used? A green. Evergreen. Yeah. It could be used every year without any changes. So, that could be sent in conjunction with another note that puts the actual date on it. You know what I mean? If you have a cover message saying.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I was fine with it. I thought it came out very nicely. I was happy with it.
Mm-hmm. Jack, I thought your zippity-doo-dah reformatting of it was really nice. That really helped give it some punch and clarity.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you,
Yeah.
Jack. You have anything you want to add at this point?
No, these are the least effort revisions by just plugging it into ChatGPT and then sharing.
But it helped. It did help. Mike, anything?
No,
Good to go?
no issues. Yep.
All right. So we just need basically a vote of consensus here that
I just wanted to say one other thing. 'Cause I know on Art's first draft that he came out with, it was much more detailed and extensive on the multiple responsibilities of council member, and all of that I think is good to save, and use as inputs to whoever gets elected in the position, because the intention of this was to have, more of something brief and marketing and, sort of a little PR approach to give people an idea of what's involved, but obviously not describing it in its complex detail. So the other level of a more detailed one is certainly still valid and relevant, and I hope you find a way to work that into an orientation packet for your new council members.
Perhaps it would be keep the two documents, the short pithy one and the boring longer one.
Sure. Yeah, something
it
like
wasn't
that.
boring. It was just longer.
My wife thought it was boring. She says this is going to put off anybody for running.
Well, then it's a good thing we got the shorter one, because the shorter one is what our committee needs to be able to distribute when we do the opening of the nominations period. And it meets our purposes, the short one. But Alexa, what did you think of the longer one and the shorter one?
The shorter one was a huge improvement, and I was really impressed with the editing. But the other thing that I really liked about the shorter one was the contact numbers and the invitation to contact people.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so forth. So I
make it accessible. Yeah, make it doable.
Much more welcoming piece. So I think it does the job.
Okay, thank you. Sounds like we have a good consensus here, and this committee needs to just vote that we are ready to use the shorter version for the committee purposes when we open the nomination period. Can we have a motion to do that, that the committee will use the shorter version for our purposes?
Motion.
Second? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
And that aye comes with a big thank you to everybody who worked on it, especially Art for taking the lead.
Hey,
The
Marty,
second piece- Yeah,
would the committee decide whether to take that date out or not to say
Oh, we did.
FY 26?
Yeah, we could take it out. We could take it
Okay.
out. That's administrative. We can
So
take
if
it
that's
out.
okay, I'll just delete that, and then I'm gonna post it literally on the council's page as well. For whatever you want to do with it.
Okay,
Because it can live right there as well, and then it can just stay there. I don't have to change it every year.
yes, exactly. We try to make your life easy, Michael.
Thank you.
We do. All right. The second piece of that three-part proposal was more problematic. And that was the one that talked about having, the financial information with pie charts and some more useful thing. And I ended up, I need those who were at the meeting, Elizabeth, you especially were there, and Mike, I think you were there too, Mike Z. First they said they weren't going to do it, and then it sounded like at the end, like Jeff Blander, our treasurer, our council treasurer, said that he would
Yeah.
put together a little one-pager along the lines that we recommended. So I guess I'm asking Art and Alexa, what's the status of that? Because it sounded like at the end that there was a yes there, although initially it sounded like a no. So where are we?
Call Jeff.
Call Jeff. Okay.
I got the distinct impression Jeff said he would do it.
Yeah.
And he would have it soon, he said. I forget what the day, he was like, it was going to work on it right away. And it would also have a pie chart. He
Right.
always laughed. He laughed a little bit about the pie chart, but I think he, acknowledged that it was a good idea, and I got the distinct impression that he was going to produce a draft fairly
As
soon.
did I.
Yeah.
That's what
So should the committee follow up with Jeff directly, or Alexa, do you want to do that, or how do we proceed there?
whatever, I can do that. I'll just send them a text.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, tell them we're looking forward to it, or whatever you want to say. Nothing else we need to do on that at the moment. The third part of the proposal was this notion of having some kind of open community forum where people could talk about, not just the current budget distributions, but what additional programs, kind of like some of the questions that were on the survey that Michael Silliman just sent around. And I sort of again had the same sort of like, well, no, not going to do it. Well, yes, we could do it. I think that could be done. Again, it's not up to the election committee to do it. Elizabeth, I think you were very clear at the council meeting that this is not something the election committee needs to do at all. We were just proposing that the council provide more opportunity for public discussion of village
Mhm.
priorities.
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
Yep. I believe so.
So I'm not sure where that stands at this point. Arthur and Alexa, can you fill us in? No?
And I have to remind myself of what we were,
I'm sorry, say it again, Alexa, I missed that.
to remind myself, of the conversation we had. I thought we had, I don't remember. I'm gonna go through my notes, sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. If you go through your notes, again, we've put it basically in the council's hands. And so, the committee recommended that we thought it was a good idea to have some kind of forum where residents could talk about all kinds of priorities.
We have
And,
not
but
proceeded.
we don't want the committee to do that for them. We want the council to do that for them. That was our proposal.
Essentially,
don't-
we have ignored that proposal.
Okay, so ignored does not mean said no.
It's the actionable equivalent.
Okay, so in fact that was a no, that we're not going to expand that opportunity. Tabled?
What I remember,
Table, that's a good word. Why didn't I think of that?
It would be nice to get that message from the council if a proposal that's been presented in writing and discussed at the meeting is turned down, that there is feedback to that extent, right? That would be really helpful.
Well, there wasn't actual formal discussion and turn down. It was, as I said, ignored.
Oh, well, that's,
Yeah, if you could get
So-
back
so
to us,
it's
Arthur,
functionally tabled.
answer, that would be helpful. I think I take Elizabeth's point to heart. You know, the committee and well, any committee, you know, puts a lot of work into a proposal and it's a courtesy to get back to people with something definitive, one way or the other. Even if it's a no, it can be a very nice no, but leaving it in limbo felt to me uncomfortable, which is one reason it's on the agenda tonight. Yeah, Alexa, yes, go ahead.
What I remember, and it may have been something that I sussed out of what was being slightly discussed, is that a forum already exists. Does that make sense?
The March discussion that the council has about the budget, the proposed budget, is open to the public. It could be way more well publicized. Last year, the only two people who went, now the whole village, were me and Elizabeth. So yeah, there is a possibility there that that March regularly scheduled budget session, informal budget, which Michael Silliman, you did a nice job on that last year, by the way. I thought you really presented well there. But that discussion deserves a wider audience, and people should know more about why it might be useful and interesting for them to attend that, because a lot of information in that session. You all did a good job. So, Alexa, you know, that's something maybe you could help Michael publicize more. I don't know.
Is that can I jump in here, Marty?
You bet.
I took both these recommendations as kind of, comments to my processes, because there is already an annual meeting, which is the term you all use. That's the May meeting where the council adopts the budget. So, formalizing that a little bit and making it more of an open house where people can ask questions and those ideas, those are good ideas that we can take under advisement and see if we can implement portions of those at least. And then with the budget process, I'm already, like you said, I'm already doing an open budget hearing. I'm already presenting the budget ahead of time. We're working on it together. I am having comments for each single line item in the budget, but I'm also working with a process to improve that already. So I'm already doing a lot of that. And like you said, this isn't something the election committee would do. This is more my job. So you're all more just like making comments about my job and maybe some recommendations on how I could improve it. But that's not necessarily something that the council needs to like vote yes or no. It's more just like take it under advisement and then try to improve our processes.
Okay, I'll accept that. What do you all think? I mean, I think you heard us loud and clear, right?
that would be a response, what Michael just said, for
Mhm.
sure. And
Well,
Michael,
this
I
is-
think you also said that you were going to check with Chevy Chase Village, since I was the one who said that I had received a flyer from them announced somewhere, or maybe it was in one of these community neighborhood listservs where they described their annual meeting with the budget, where they actually had a sort of a social hour or half hour or whatever preceding it, where people could just meet and greet informally and then sit down and listen to it and ask questions on it and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it sounded much more interactive.
Yeah, I
than
haven't
what
had
we had.
a chance to talk to their manager yet about that specific topic, but
Okay.
I did
All
attend
right.
a session at the conference I went to last week on budgeting and
Uh-huh.
have a bunch of ideas that I'm trying to implement. Those as well as other ideas. There's like a
Okay.
transmittal letter and a budget narrative, those types of
Mm.
documents that you can create that do provide a lot of, clarity and stuff. So there's some
Yeah.
improvements coming, but of course it's going to take time.
Sure.
And it's not
Right.
like you have anything else to do this year, like the sidewalk project on Brookville Road or
Right.
the stormwater management recommendations from the engineer or the building code, Michael. It's not like you have anything else to do
Right.
this year.
And the village of Chevy Chase, is twice the size, and they have a staff of about 30 people over there. So I just want to point that out.
Mhm.
Yes. We think you're the equivalent of at least 20 people, if not all 30. Just saying. Okay. Are we all like okay with the three parts where we are in the three-part proposal? I think we got to go like
Yes.
clarity tonight.
Sure.
Alexa, go ahead.
By the way, I did look at some of the websites of other municipalities. I didn't see anything about forums. Maybe I wasn't looking deeply enough, but I just wanted to tell Elizabeth that I thought that was a good idea to see what other villages, etc., were doing. But my real question here is the idea of the forum. We're talking about budget. Is that the main goal, is to have a forum where the residents had more a chance to have a greater understanding of the budget or hear about the budget or what? If there was one main goal for this part 3 of the 3-part proposal, what would it be? Just so I understand better what you're looking for.
Elizabeth, would you like to answer?
Well, when I originally wrote that down, I was thinking about having the opportunity for residents to hear what was at the draft budget stage for the next year. What were the items that were being considered for funding, so that early enough in the process that residents could, respond to those, provide some feedback, give maybe new ideas even into the process that hadn't been considered already, or certainly to give constructive feedback on what they saw on a draft, but like an annotated draft budget. So it gives the item, but it also says what it's about, sort of thing, something a little more with a little more context. And to let the public, let the residents have the time to respond to that. Maybe it'd be published before that initial meeting, Michael, you were saying. And then at the meeting, when it's considered, people wouldn't be looking at it for the first time, but would had a chance to review it and formulate comments. That's all. So they'd be a little more involved in the whole budgeting process rather than just having it presented as a done deal. Later, when we were talking about it as a committee, it kind of morphed a little bit more into the idea of a forum, not restricted to budget necessarily. There may be scope for that as well, but that is definitely something that the council has to think there's a need for it, and because they would be running it, and to in a way you're doing your resident survey. So the survey is a way to get people's input and ideas, right? So that may sort of replace the idea of a forum, or it's something similar, and that may be good enough for now. But that's how the idea came about. It started with just thinking about, a little more democratic process to coming up with the budget. And I think both ideas are meritorious, but there's also a question of being pragmatic and all of that with, as Michael said, with the resources that we have and the time of our volunteers and all the rest. So as long as you get input coming from some sources, and hopefully your survey will be useful to accomplish that goal.
Anything else on that? Thank you, Elizabeth. Alexa, does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. One other item that came out of the October meeting that we followed up on involves you, Mike Z, and thank you for following up on it. I went back and listened to the recording again, and we had instructions, it sounded to me, as a committee, from Susan Fattig, that we were supposed to go out and find out what elections cost in other villages. And Mike Z kindly agreed to do a preliminary check on that. Mike, can you report back what you found?
Yeah, well, it's a dark area to get into, unfortunately. I did try to find budget information from all the local jurisdictions actually around this area. The only ones that I found that actually had breakouts in their budget documents were the town of Chevy Chase, which has a line item for election stuff, and it's a secondary breakout of $29,000. And the Chevy Chase Village has something labeled in for FY 26 for elections, $5,500. The other ones don't break anything out. I tried to use ChatGPT to go and find more of this stuff, but it didn't come up with anything either. So I don't think, if you're looking at just budget documents, there's not that much out there to put a handle on. I think a lot of the other things are, folded into professional services, and, like Michael's talking about, you got a lot of administrative stuff that kind of gets absorbed in the process that may be under other titles. So, absent some serious, sleuthing and contacting and trying, if it would even be possible, to try to isolate, dollars from from the other jurisdictions. And the other question was, and I know Marty's observed this too, and somebody mentioned it at the council meeting, well, cost per vote. Well, that's that's not necessarily a very informative number, I don't think. Because, as Marty's observed, there's a lot of you know, advantages in larger numbers, and it's, so I think unless there's some real need to look at that. I think it was more of a curiosity, and one council member sort of suggested that it be done. I don't think there's much utility in doing it, and I don't think there's a lot of information out there that would be very useful actually for us.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Again, one of the things I'd like to point out that Mike Z and I talked about was that elections generally are sort of a fixed base cost. Whether you have election for 1,000 people or 10,000 people, the basic mechanics are a fixed base cost. That doesn't vary much. And so the rate per vote is statistically pretty meaningless because it's a fixed base. You're going to have like a base cost of $5,000 or $6,000 no matter what you do, even if you do the most minimal thing. And that's true whether you got 1,000 voters or 10,000 voters. The time of the staff at Electek, it takes like 2 hours if you have 500 votes, and only takes 1 hour to count the machine votes if you have 100 votes. But that's not, a driver of costs. And so Mike's right that the cost per vote is a pretty meaningless statistic. Elizabeth, you were going to say something?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say our costs, there, as far as I know, there are only two line items. One is the Electek contract, and the second one is this cost for someone to help with the voter roll verification.
Well, we
As far
also
as I know,
have
I mean, there are maybe other things like postage and all of that,
Yeah.
administrative costs that Michael has. But you know what I'm saying? Is there anything else major other than those two chunks that are specifically, let's say, specifically election committee activities that have a budget item?
Yeah, the letter track contract, which is what enables Electek to put the postal tracking on the envelopes, which
Uh-huh.
is required in the regs and has been ever since 2020.
Yeah.
But that letter track that was only a couple $100, right, Michael Silliman?
Yeah,
I
I don't
remember
have
it's
the
like
number in front of me,
it,
but
it was
it
minimal.
wasn't
It's like
substantial. But I do think getting around, I mean, there's two problems. One is the $10,000 limit we talked about earlier. The other problem is the budget that the council passes is $10,000,
Right.
which that might need to go up in future years as well. So, and a workaround for that is, either do a budget adjustment and add some more money halfway through the year, or I can move some of that stuff to like administrative. Like I have a budget line item for postage that I actually raised this year, and the council raised. So that actually, like I can put the postage there and keep it under that $10,000 budget line.
Would the postal tracking contract go in there too, or it's just a
I could,
software
yeah,
purchase? It's not a
yeah.
contract.
Money's fungible, so I really can kind of move things around. And as long as the audit, understands why I put it there, there's a rationale for why I put it there. From the accountant's perspective, we're fine.
Good. And again, the postal tracking, as I recall, was like $200 or something. It was
Yeah, it
not
wasn't
big.
substantial. Yeah.
And it is required. So, anything
But-
else on
Yeah,
this?
there is a line item in the village budget that says $10,000 up for election community
That's right.
elections. So,
Yeah.
And that basically all goes
Right.
to the election service contractor.
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions about that? And Mike Z, thank you again for the legwork on that. Nice research.
So Marty,
Mhm.
what do you need to formulate a response to Susan Faddick's question, or how does this work?
Well, it can work any way the committee wants. I mean, it was sort of an informal request, but I do believe, like you
Yeah.
said earlier, that when someone makes a request on the record, that you ought to respond to it. So we probably ought to draft a short paragraph response. Mike, do you want to take a shot at a draft for that? We could approve the draft report back to Susan Faddick administratively. We don't have to have that at this meeting, but I guess that's what I would do, is just write up a paragraph or two and say,
Right.
we followed your request and here's what we found out.
And these are the two items in the budget.
Yeah,
that,
so we can put that
that have been
together. Mike, if you'll
requested.
draft it,
Okay.
the committee can approve it by email administratively, because that's just an administrative report. Are we all good with that? Any objections to that? Okay, moving onward and upward. Access to the village attorney. I was very happy that Ron Bolt said that it was actually more efficient for the committee to call him if we have questions. Easier, less billing in terms of his time, and easier for us to actually have a conversation with him if we have questions for him. And I mean, that was a really good result because we really do need to sometimes ask a direct question and then follow up and clarify it because it's not always clear. And, this committee has between us a whole lot of experience on various kinds of elections, but, any questions we have tend to be down in the weeds, and, it's hard to even write them down without taking a lot of time. So, any questions that you have for Ron, we can now send a request through channels. We'd have to send an email to Michael Silliman and to our Alexa, our liaison, and to probably Arthur as well as the chair, and say the election committee would like, permission to talk to Ron Bolt about XYZ. And we were assured by Council Member Andrew Cowders that the council would not hold that up, and that Michael would not hold that up, that we would be able to get prompt access. And so I think the only thing that we need to do tonight as a committee is decide whether we want to have a vote on following up with Ron Bolt, putting in such a phone call. We'll see how many questions we have after tonight's meeting. I have a couple of questions for him, and you all are taking notes on things you might like to ask him about during this meeting. My question for Arthur and for Alexa, our two council members here, is as follows. Under the Open Meetings Act, I understand that meetings to get advice from your attorney are often closed meetings, and that to hold a closed meeting, the council, and presumably this committee as well, would need to vote to hold a closed meeting and state the reason for the closed meeting as being, seeking advice from attorney. So if we wanted to talk to Ron Bolt, we as a committee, during the next month, which we might, we would need to vote tonight at this public meeting to approve having a closed meeting with Ron Bolt for attorney's advice.
Doesn't quite work that way. What you do is open an open meeting and then move to go into closed meeting. And so you don't do it now, you do it at the time that you do the meeting. So first it's open, somebody moves to go into closed meeting, you do that, and then you're in closed meeting.
So we would have to schedule the phone call with Ron Bolt. And, first we would send an email to you guys saying we would like to have a conversation with the attorney. And then you would say yes, presumably.
Right.
And then we would schedule with Ron when he would be available for us to have, I don't know, maybe a 20-minute phone call with him. I don't know. It wouldn't be long, I don't think. And then we would have Michael Silliman post a meeting notice publicly, because we would have to have a public meeting to go into the closed meeting with Ron Bolt.
Wait, sorry, I think this.
That's what I understand, but I would actually check with Ron first to see if all that is necessary.
I don't think any of that's necessary. I think we can just, if we want to approve, starting the attorney's clock, which is, of course, a decision that has to be made at the council level, then we can set up a call and you can just call him, Marty. That's fine.
We don't need to go
Michael,
through an open closed meeting process
It's not,
at all?
unless a quorum of your committee is there.
Yeah, if the whole
We would want
committee
a
is
quorum
involved.
there
Why would you want a quorum there?
so that everybody can ask him questions, so that everybody's clear. There are only 5 of us, which means any 3 of us is a quorum. So yeah, I would want, I wouldn't want to.
So to go into a closed session when we're doing a training on the Closed Meeting Act, or the Open Meeting Act, later this week. So you should all come and we can ask Ron there because he'll be there. But you can receive legal
remember
advice
that
in an
question,
open
Mike.
meeting.
Yeah, that's one of our questions for Ron already on our list, is how do we
Yeah.
go about scheduling a committee conversation with the attorney?
I would be fine sitting out that meeting and just letting 2 people meet with him on our behalf.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Probably
so-
don't need a full meeting or a quorum meeting.
Right.
Right. So we actually might have 2 avenues here. We might have an avenue where just 2 of us talk to Rod and we report back to the rest of the team on the committee. And that's good for you guys?
Sure.
That works. That's the easy way.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. That's a good clarification. The second procedure would be if all 5 of us wanted to have a conversation with Ron about something, that would have to go through an
That
open
would be a
meeting.
public meeting.
A
That
public
wouldn't be a
meeting.
closed meeting. It would be a public meeting.
But
The
for
only reason you
attorneys,
would close it is if it's something that's confidential that the client, needs to the attorney needs to talk with a quorum of the council, then you can go into private meeting under the Private Meetings Act, or under the Open Meetings Act. So, but for your purposes, I can't imagine there would be anything that would need to be confidential, like the sale of land or personnel matters or one of those exemptions for the Open Meetings Act. It would be a public meeting.
Mm. Well, the 14 or whatever it is exceptions to the Open Meeting Act do provide for attorney advice being done in closed meetings.
Right, but he can
doesn't have
also
to be.
provide advice in open
I
meeting.
think if we're comfortable with just 2 people being there, then maybe we don't need to solve this right now.
Good point. Moving ahead. Has anybody else got any contributions on this? I think that again tonight we're putting together, compiling our initial list of questions for Ron, and we'll go ahead and have just 2 of us talk to him on the phone if we have a list after tonight. Okay.
Mhm.
Good to roll. Ready to rock and roll. Looking at the time, we are moving along here. Was there anything else from the October council meeting that we needed to discuss tonight to follow up on? Okay. On the elections for tonight, I gave you all a draft markup based on our previous conversations. And let's do the easy part first. All right. Does everybody have that document in front of them?
Yes.
All right. Okay. It said preliminary notes for election committee discussion. All right. And I
Yeah.
just put it up on my screen here. So on my screen, it's not on yours. But if we just walk through this, everybody got it in front of them?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Let me pull it back up again on mine. Okay. First thing is just changing the dates. January 15th, 2006 is when the council will adopt this, presumably. The first red letter area is in number 2, adding in, which is a pretty substantial part of the election process, supervision of the operational election work of election contractors. And the last 2 years, the committee has put in equivalent language, not exactly the same. And the council has taken it out. And so that goes to the core issue, which keeps coming up in these elections, which is whether Michael Silliman manages the contractor or the committee does, or both do, or however. So let's hold that for a moment because that's a biggie. Let's go down to the next line where it says, prepare and authorize the ballots subject to council approval for absentee balloting. That is something that the last 2 committees have questioned because there are no absentee ballots.
Mhm.
And the council has approved mail votes since 2020. So
Right.
I don't know
It's
why that's in there. And that would be all on my questions to Ron list. Yeah, it's an odd reference to something that doesn't apply. Okay.
Mhm.
All right,
I did-
then we go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when I read through it, some of the changes I would say fall into the category of omissions, that they are things that are being done in practice but aren't reflected in the regulations. Some are questions of accuracy, and others are questions of sort of principle. So, I mean, that's how I came up with 3 categories for all the changes that were noted in there. And that one I would say is an issue of accuracy about and it's also an anachronism. You're saying it's something that doesn't exist anymore. So absentee balloting, so it shouldn't be present. Anyway, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Jack and Mike, it's the first time you're looking at this document in detail. Do you have any take on whether that language should be in or out?
The absentee balloting,
Yeah,
take it out. Take it out. We don't do absentee balloting.
right. Jack, thoughts?
Mhm.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Unqualified to opine, having not been through an election yet. So I trust you all.
Okay. All right, let's scroll down a little farther here in our document. And general provisions, section 3.3, some wording changed. Changed to not just the staff shall post the committee's election announcements, but the broader term information, because we also post our reports and other documents, updates, newsletter articles throughout the election cycle as specified by the committee with respect to content, format, and timing. And that's the first part. So let's just talk about that. That reflected our discussion from last month's committee meeting, where and we said, yeah, it needs to be posted accurately. Any comments on that today? That's pretty.
This was the one that, some of those words that were changed were kind of more stylistic in nature rather than content related. But like, for example, specified as opposed to submitted. But the part about content, format, and timing were all things, yes, that we discussed in our last month's meeting that would, that should be in there. So I don't have any.
Okay.
I don't have anything to add to what the draft language you proposed there.
Jack, Mike, you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. And the next line that's in there, let me go back to it here, is about something that else that is not in the regs. The requirement that, hang on, let me pull it up here. I'm still looking at my document.
Please give the number reference, Marty, when
Yeah, general provisions, number 3, right after the sentence we just said that, that basically the information has to be posted as we specify. That the committee shall keep the village manager informed, right? It doesn't actually say that in the regs, and it ought to. That's a pretty standard regulatory provision. And shall provide election reports at the monthly council meetings. That also is not specified in the regs, and is a pretty important public information function to have election reports at the meeting. It doesn't say they have to be written, although ours typically are. But the idea that you'd have monthly election reports at the council meetings seems pretty basic to me. And, the regs should specify it. If that's going to be the expectation and the normal practice, the regs should say it. So this is an omission that I think we can correct pretty simply.
Okay.
Any objections to that one?
Nope.
No.
Ready to rock and roll with the next. Okay. Scrolling down in our little markup here. Okay. And before we go on, I want to thank Arthur Alexander for pointing out that, in fact, the regs didn't say that the election notices and all should be posted as submitted. So it's a good correction that we've got that in there. That's a pretty basic bedrock principle of elections, that candidates and council members, elected officials, don't change their election notices. So that's pretty basic. All right, so going down, qualified voters who can vote. There were no changes in there, but I did want to mention here, just for our discussion on the record, one of the things that bothered me at the October council meeting was a comment from a couple of council members that somehow the committee had complicated the election procedures, and that's simply not true. What got complicated in the last few years was this who can vote, and that was done entirely by the council. The committee didn't recommend changing the who can vote regs in the charter. That was done by Arthur and Ron, and the committee now has to implement the who can vote. It's more complicated than it used to be, but it wasn't the committee that complicated that. And the same is true also of the Appendix A here, which is the voter roll verification piece. That was adopted by the council in March of 22. Nobody on the 24, 25, or 26 committee wrote that. And again, those are the two, the definition of who can vote and the voter roll verification procedures are the most complicated pieces of the election regs. And neither one of them was created by the committee or by the voters. I mean, this isn't something that voters wrote. This is something that was done by the council. And I think they're fine. Don't let me misunderstand me. I think that the content of them is fine, but they are complicated. And I just want to make it clear that it wasn't the committee that complicated them. Any comments on that before we move on?
Well, yeah, I heard the word arcane whispered by someone on the council about this and why they were so arcane. So I got the same impression also, as if we were trying to complicate people's lives with these, or raising questions on, but the fact is, it was this document was presented to the election committee to implement, and all we're trying to do is to fine tune a few little, dotting I's and crossing T's in a few places, but that are important I's and important T's, to meet the what it says in the purpose statement, for example, at the top. So, and that's not, I mean, we're just doing the job basically. And it is complicated and complex, but that's the nature of this, of election rules. So I just would hope that the council wouldn't think, that this is, that we're making, unnecessary work here or complications for anybody, including ourselves. That would be a terrible misunderstanding of the work we're doing, especially since, we're investing quite a bit of time in this. There's a lot to read and review and a lot of reporting. And it's just all in the name of transparency and good governance here. So, and following certainly not our standards, but standards that are tried and true and best practices out there in the world around us. So I just hope that message gets back to the council, because I got the distinct feeling that, people were raising eyebrows and rolling their eyes. It made me feel uncomfortable. So we
Yeah,
just want to get on with it. That's all. And
Yeah.
these are, I would say that after these changes that we were proposing here, there probably would be very little need to do anything with this document, in the next coming election cycles, unless there's some drastic structural change, that goes on in the community that would affect elections. I would think that it could stand alone for quite some time after this last little revision.
That's our goal, certainly. I mean, we talked about at our last meeting, standardizing these provisions and having them meet standards of election procedures, not just, non-standard procedures should not be permanently, but we're getting closer and closer to having standard election procedures here for our village that meet the standards of what you call a good election. And Elizabeth, thank you. I mean, I also had that feeling like, wait a minute, it wasn't the committee that complicated this stuff. We're just trying to carry it out. I would also like to point out for the record that in last year's committee, there was two different versions of the recount provision. One complicated version that was proposed by the council, and a much simpler version of how you do recounts that came from the last year's election committee. And that the election committee's simpler version was the one the council thankfully ultimately adopted. So wherever possible, this committee in 24, 25, and 26 has simplified the regs and has recommended simpler versions of things, that it's the council that has been largely putting in the more complicated things, and, we'll live with them. But I just want to make sure that Alexa and Arthur, that you do take it back to the rest of the council, that this is not the election committee complicating things, that like with the recount provision, where there's a simpler way to do something, we have systematically and consistently recommended the simpler way. All right. Okay, moving on.
Could I suggest that aside from I know there's a bunch of mentions of instruct the village manager, but aside from that, could I suggest that we go through all of the changes and then maybe flag any objections instead of going through one by one?
Okay. All right.
Would everyone be open to that?
I am. Yeah, let's do this efficiently. So proceed, Jack.
Oh, sure.
Rolling through the document.
Okay. Is the next one may be required to sign?
Yeah, that came up. And again, this goes back to Elizabeth's point about being accurate. What the committee did last year, and I believe in previous years.
I recall the discussion, so I'm good with that change.
Okay, good. Anybody else have questions about that? No?
No.
All right, rock and roll. Continue, Jack.
Next is number 8, candidates for office by posting the committee's announcement on the village public communication email.
Yeah.
Any objections there?
Any objections? All good?
Okay, great.
Yeah.
10.6F, adding print the election committee's address as the return address in both the incoming ballot packets and the official ballot return envelopes. Any objections?
Yeah.
No.
The discussion.
We discussed that last time, right?
Mhm.
Okay, great. 9.1, add the village manager shall record the vote counting session. Oh, and I skipped one, and replace more with less.
Yeah.
So sessions to be held no less than 2 weeks after election day.
Yeah, earlier in the doc it says no less, and then this one said no more, and so, that's just a contradiction we had to clean up. And the second one, I had thought that Electech, the contractor, was the one recording the vote counting session, but Michael Silliman told me that he's the one recording it, so that just needs to be accurate.
I have a
Okay.
question about the first sentence in that one. Just seemed a little wordy to me. I would suggest moving the after 5 p.m. up to after held, because it's 2 weeks after the election day, after 5 p.m. on the designated date. I didn't know what the hell that meant. So that the contractor shall schedule the vote counting session to be held after 5 p.m. No later or on no more or less than 2 weeks after the election day, or on a designated date, or on a date. I think that
Yeah.
should be just change that wording around a little bit so that it's after 5 p.m. on the day no less than 2 weeks after the election day, something like that.
Right, right. Yeah,
Sounds good to me.
okay. I'll make that note. Because clarity is really an important value. When you're writing election regs, clarity counts for a lot. Okay, go ahead. What's
All
next,
right,
Jack?
11.4B,
Yeah.
add initial. Any
Yeah,
objections?
I'm good with that. Anybody?
Yeah. No
Okay,
problem.
Great. Next
Down to
is
Appendix A.
the next one B, yeah, Appendix A,
B train.
yeah, that's the voter roll
BD.
verification procedures. And there are a whole bunch of the instruct the village managers there.
Yeah.
And so CD
Yeah.
is the strike through, send an annual notice to each voter by first class mail.
Yeah,
So
we've
we're
never
you
done
just
that.
remove that.
Yeah, we've
Okay.
never done that. I mean, it's
Any
not
objections
illegal.
to any objections to striking? Okay, great.
Using return mail to help identify people who may no longer be residents. That's something the county and the state both do. That's a standard election verification mechanism. But that doesn't mean you have to send an annual notice to all 625 voters. I mean,
Right.
who needs that
Okay.
work?
Then moving on to still in Appendix A,
21 days.
or E change from 30 to 21 days.
Yeah, the reason for that is the last 2 years, the committee has had a hard time making getting the voter roll cleaned up enough to the point where we could send the letters out 30 days in advance. We could do 21 days is workable. 30 didn't really, it was pushing it. It was really hard. We squeaked by last year with maybe 29 days, but it should be clear. 21 days is enough.
Good by me.
Anybody?
Okay.
Okay.
All right, great. F change describing to about.
Yeah,
Looks good.
that's just because we don't have room on a postcard to describe the process. We could just tell people there is one.
E2, I think this is the same as before. We're
Same,
changing must to
right.
may be required, so that
Right,
makes sense. Appendix B1, striking business, so just leave it at least 10 days.
Yeah, again, that's because of the timing of this train stations that we have to meet. It's 10 business days is 14 days working, calendar. So 10 days, calendar days is fine.
Alexa, did you have a comment?
No, you,
Oh, I thought I saw the hand. Okay.
Yeah.
What's that section again, Jack? The one you just said?
Appendix B, number 1.
Appendix B.
Yeah, election form procedure.
Oh, that didn't print out. Oh, is there? There it is on the back. Sorry. Okay. B1. Yeah. All right, got it.
And I think that's everything.
10 calendar days is what you mean there. Yes?
Right, 10 calendar days. Yeah. Just makes it more workable.
Okay.
Okay, that was very efficient, Jack. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Way to go. Now, the only thing left is sort of the big issue, which is whether or not the village staff should be involved in, instruct the staff to instruct the contractor to do X, Y, Z. And we don't need to decide that tonight, but I did want to allow time for us to discuss that tonight. If people want to still think about it some more, that's a decision we'll need to make at the next meeting in December. So
Okay.
if people want to hold about,
Yeah.
and open to discussion now.
Well, I could say two things about it. One, it's the way it used to be for most of the election cycle up until 2020 or something like that.
That's correct.
Okay, so past practice, precedent for that many years, how many going back to whatever the
Gene Sperling said it goes back to 2000 to 1916 that we
Okay.
had, independently run elections since
all right.
1916. I only go back to 85.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I know the Supreme Court now has decided to overturn precedent, but hopefully that that would still have some weight here. The other thing is there's an efficiency argument that if we're trying to be as streamlined as possible, we're complicating it by adding a whole lot more work on Michael's agenda. And and it's just that if you have more individuals involved in the managing the content part of the election process, once you're into this, under very tight timeframes, there's always a possibility of missing a deadline or being, unnecessarily rushed or something like this, leaving something out. That can just happen the more people that are involved. So there's an efficiency angle. And then the third thing, maybe I should have said it first, was at the very top of the document, under the purpose, where it actually says that the purpose of the regulations is to ensure fair, unbiased, independent elections. And we've had an interpretation of that language by the founders of the signers, was that it? Signers of the charter, including one of our current election committee members.
And thank you again, Mike Zielinski, for
I
helping
didn't sign
found
the
our village government.
Who actually wrote an
There's old
opinion.
people that happened to be around at the time.
Yeah, but you actually got together after all these years and you went back and reviewed what was the thinking that went into it.
Right.
And you concurred on it, and you wrote a beautiful memo to the council, a very convincing, strong memo to the council saying this indeed was what we intended. It was the original intent, was they should do their business, independently. So those are my 4 reasons why I think that these edits should be recommended once again. And this is the 3rd time around to the council. 3rd time we've recommended it. It's been denied twice. So we're trying for a 3rd time, just so that you new members understand this is not the first time around.
I will follow up with a thank you to Elizabeth, because that was very clear and thoughtful and well presented as always. And also just say that the last 2 committees in 24 and 25 were unanimous in saying that independently operated elections are pretty bedrock principle. So it wasn't like it was a question within the committee at all. And we also had a number of residents speak up at council meetings and our committee meetings saying the same thing. So it's a pretty important structural issue. And I encourage us all to really give it good thought between now and December, which when we need to make a decision on that. And I'd ask the council members who are here to think about it.
We've thought it through pretty well, and I think we're all in agreement on it. What we got to do is convince the people that are Arthur and the rest of the folks that are on the council, and that's going to be another question, obviously.
Can I
So,
ask Arthur
and
or Alexa or the rationale for? I'm trying to wrap my head around kind of what makes sense in theory versus what might have been a pragmatic change. And so I'm just trying to understand historical context and rationale.
I will try to address that. I will even turn on my camera for that.
Ooh.
Thank you, Arthur.
Right. Start video. Okay. There's a couple of reasons. First, I think that you may misremember procedures from the past when the village manager sent out the notices. She was she was directly involved, uh, and the election committee did very little of that. Uh, another the two other issues. One is that we have a kind of a very small organization, and it's a unified management process without having. Um, hold on a minute. I don't know if you can. A unified management. We don't have separate departments to deal with different things, and the handling of contractors is seen to be a core management function, and that we prefer to have dealings with contractors go through the manager. That's all. There may be ways to come up with better means of making it more efficient, but it is in the aim is to have a unified procedure for dealing with contractors. Let's see if there are some other reasons as well, but I can't recall them at the moment.
When was the change made?
Well, there was never a change. This is since we
Oh,
started
this,
working with an election contractor back at the beginning of the pandemic.
2020.
okay, and prior to that,
Prior to
there
that,
was no election contractor.
right. The committee got paper ballots, and if there were requests for mail-in, they opened up the mail at that time and counted the ballots by hand. And we all waited anxiously while they went through their count in the typically office next door to the village office. Whoever was there at the time let us use their office for the election counting. So we've always had direct managerial relations with the election contractor.
Okay, so is
Go ahead, please.
yeah, so is the chronology that the election committee used to count the ballots at the start of COVID? We hired an election contractor and
Correct.
designated that the village manager would interact with the contractor. And
Right.
then
Correct.
over the past few years, the election committee has recommended against that to where the committee would just interact directly with the contractor
Correct.
to preserve fair and
That's right.
bias.
Well,
Okay,
there were times when the contractor, and we I think I mentioned this briefly at the last meeting. There were a period when the contractor complained about excessive uh, communications with the election committee and was threatening to withdraw from the contract because they found it to be a nuisance. And so the manager came back into the process more uh, with greater strength and force to be the link rather than to have the election committee deal with them directly.
got
I
it.
do need to add some context to that, if you excuse me, Jack and Arthur.
Mm.
There were a lot of election malfunctions going on from 20 to 2023. 24 committee is the one that this reported complaint came in. But that complaint never came to the committee. There was a report from the staff that there had been complaint. I have no idea how serious the complaint was. I went back and looked at the logbook of the committee's calls to the contractor in 2024, and we were doing a lot of cleanup on a lot of election process problems, including the voter roll. And the calls were reasonably timed. They were um, when we submitted the voter roll, when we had questions about cleaning up and correcting the ballot packet. It was not like, nuisance calls. I think that's
Well, they consider. Let me just say they considered them nuisance calls. Some were on weekends, some were after hours, and their staff complained about it. So I
well, we
think
are
we just
volunteers. We
we
work
can-
weekends and after hours, but I don't want to debate that now.
okay,
I just want
right,
to
we
say there
don't-
was a context in which that committee in 24 had a lot of cleanup work to do and did it well. 2024 was the first time since 2019 that there were no election operational malfunctions. So, Jack, continue. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
got it. But even in that case, the wording was still as it is, as we're looking at now in
Uh,
the regs.
these well these particular regulations where I can't remember when about 3 years ago, were first approved. We had different sets of regulations, nothing as detailed as this. And this present draft was more or less in place, I believe, 2 years ago. And there have been these smaller
Yeah,
changes made since then.
let me address that more directly, Jack. The 2023 regs that the council approved did not have the village manager inserted all the way through, like the verification process. All those things are marked in yellow. 2023 regs did not have that. The council added those insertions in January 2024 over the objections of the 2024 election committee.
Mhm.
Got it. So is it fair to say that kind of the debate here is around election committee fears that the council would influence the village manager and the council's fears that letting the election committee work directly with the contractor would lead to the contractor terminating the agreement and us having to find a new contractor?
Right, that's right. And there's
Okay.
one other source of one other issue is that there has been among some people, some previous election committees, a fear of of the council influencing elections. There's also a legitimate fear of the election committee influencing election. Uh, there's nothing that says that election committee people will not have favorites and push regulations and procedures to favor favorites. So it's a mutual suspicion that could occur here.
There are a
I
lot of
see.
controls on the election committee
Yeah.
actions, I should just say.
Don't we all sign ethics agreement?
Yes, we do, Elizabeth.
Yes,
Yeah,
right, Art.
right.
Art, that's your idea.
Oh, that's right. But I
Right.
mean,
Yeah,
beyond
that cuts
that,
both ways
people can
though.
operate unethically and in different ways. So,
Well,
but I mean, the problem or the fear,
take the high
the
road.
concern that the council would have undue pressure on the manager to favor certain candidates. I'm just saying it's symmetrical. There's a
I got
symmetrical
it.
fear that a committee could have undue procedures and processes to favor a particular candidate. So it's not a one-way concern.
So my question regarding some of this history, and I don't think we finished having this conversation. I'm glad we are. I certainly appreciate having more context to make decisions in. But the question I now have for both the council and for the election committee is, where are the checks and balances? How do they exist? Should they exist? What should they be in order to move forward?
Mhm. I could give you a quick answer to that. There's a longer answer, but I'll do the short one. There are a lot of checks and balances in the sense that the council approves who's on the election committee. They appoint the committee, and the council also approves the final regs. You know, the committee recommends them every year, and hopefully we're close to final at this point. But the council has a great deal of oversight in terms of the final regs. However, the council cannot really approve regulations that violate the charter, which is what one of the things that the committees have said the last few years, that is having the manager involved directly in managing the election process is not consistent with the charter. And so the checks and balances are that an independent election committee serves as a check on any council proposed regulations that might bias the election in favor of incumbent candidates. So having an independent election
Any
committee,
candidate. It
any
doesn't have to
candidate,
be
yeah, either way. And I think that you know, we have people of good faith and integrity on all sides here. Let me make that clear. And I certainly have every confidence in the integrity of our staff, Michael and Aaron at the village level. I just think the world of them. No problem. This is a structural issue, and it's not about who's in the positions now. It's about writing regs that, in fact, provide the checks and balances. There are a whole lot of controls on the election committee that are now in place, largely in part due to the work that the 24 election committee did to sort of codify all of this. They had 6 different pieces of election regs from 2023. They put them all together, put them into a unified format, and so we have one document now that we can all work with, which makes us all a whole lot less bonkers. And the checks and balances do work both ways. Most of the controversy over the last 5 years has been about the council adopting non-standard election procedures, like making the drop box optional. I mean, there are all kinds of lawsuits around the country about Republicans trying to remove drop boxes. Well, we're not partisan at all. We never have been partisan in Martin's editions. Our elections are strictly nonpartisan. But removing drop boxes doesn't help the voters. So why would any council member propose that, let alone approve it? The same was with making the forum.
I don't recall.
It was one of the changes that you made in January 2024, Arthur, was to make the Dropbox optional and to make the election forum optional.
There was a whole string of items in the
Yeah, and that
regulations
January
that had
24th.
may rather than must, and it was simply to provide flexibility flexibility in how it was arranged. So rather than having there will be candidate forums, there will be Dropbox, there was a whole sequence. I can't remember how many. There was a may rather than a will, and it was simply to have some flexibility in how things are done. For example, if there was an election with only one candidate, and there would not necessarily be a need for a candidate forum in that case. Or if there was, God forbid, a pandemic occurred, and you didn't want to have people coming in and dropping off things at a community Dropbox. So it wasn't saying that we wouldn't do it. It was just opening it up to flexibility.
Could I ask one more question? I'm curious for both sides' opinions. In a world where everyone is operating totally in good faith, what do we think would be more efficient, the council or the village manager interacting with the contractor?
The council,
The committee.
you mean the committee?
I meant the committee. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the committee has the subject matter expertise. And also, of course, I would argue the statutory responsibility to run the election.
Arthur and Alexa, what do you think?
I would have to agree that in terms of strict efficiency, if it were efficient and what's the word I'm looking at? Looking for expedient? No, not expedient. I don't like that word.
Transparent and efficient is what I go with.
Then direct contact would be more efficient.
Cool.
But we're looking for also certain protective qualities here, which may make the process less efficient.
Well, that brings up a question for me, Arthur, that I've been pondering, which is that, putting the village staff, not Michael, because we know Michael is terrific, but putting the village staff, hypothetically, into the chain of command to instruct the contractor in the operational election work. If the council had election regs that said that they could instruct that village staff person to tamper with the voter roll, for example. Again, Michael, this is not about you. I know you would never do it.
Could I interject for a sec? I think Marty, I've heard you make this point, and I, in theory, 100% get it. And so, yeah, I think.
Okay, no need to pursue it.
Yeah, understanding that it's an at-will employee who theoretically could be influenced, I think, is a point well taken.
It's what you call appearance of a conflict of interest, right? That's, I wanted to say there's one other check and balance, and it's the reporting that the election committee does regularly, rigorously to the council. So that, and also to the public, that has to be another way, so that if there was anything going on that was nefarious, that, you'd be giving public a lot of opportunity to call it out and, complain about it or whatever. So, I mean, just by if you look at the amount of, the reporting that's written into this regulations, all through the process of the 5 months or so. So that's another guardrail, I would say, in addition to the ones that were mentioned already. And then there's also, we have to look at what are what is the standard practice in other jurisdictions? Doesn't that count for something? I mean, can't Martin's Editions see how the county does it, or how other municipalities do it? And do they have this separation? And if that's the norm and the standard, then,
the county board of elections is sort of our role model for operating. And, the county council, the Montgomery County Council cannot insert its staff into the chain of command from the board of elections to the board of election contractors. I mean, there would be an uproar if that were done.
Yeah, point understood.
Yeah. So
Anyway.
one thing I could do that might be helpful, I've got some notes that I put together for another context about all the different forms of controls there are in the election committee now, and I can circulate that. That's an administrative document. And that might help reassure concerns, because there are now a lot of checks and balances in place, and I'm a big supporter of them. I don't think that anybody should be able to compromise the election process. And the other thing that sort of gets me on this is that, to the extent that incumbent candidates can adopt as council members regulations that favor them, that may not be blatantly favorable, but in terms of structure do favor them. That's a real ethical issue for an election committee, because one of the functions of an election committee is to be a check and balance on any overreaches from the council. I mean, we have a lot of lawsuits going on nationwide where the legislative bodies have put, in regulations that tilt elections in their favor, of whatever party they're in. And again, we're nonpartisan, but that sort of incumbents power to tilt the procedures. And so I'd ask Arthur and Alexa, as an election committee, I mean, we take our ethics, I think, very seriously. And what would you suggest we do if the committee thinks that an election regulation proposed by the council would in fact be unfair?
I would be hard pressed to think of any action taken by the council that would favor an incumbent running for office. I can't even imagine what I would do to influence an election. I mean, maybe you could help me know how what to do.
I will,
but
Arthur.
I
will,
can't
Arthur.
imagine.
Not cleaning your voter roll.
Not cleaning your voter roll can distort an election. Makes it really easy.
How would that favor an incumbent? I don't understand.
Because there are so many incorrect ballots that if only a handful of people actually voted them, they're all out there floating out there because the voter roll wasn't verified. And if anybody, again, we have 625 voters, I assume that they're all saints, but if anybody were to vote 5 or 6 between their friends, cronies, right, of those excess ballots in favor of incumbent candidates, that's enough to win an election. Our election.
Why would they do it for the incumbent? Why not for somebody else? I don't want to go run through this, but
well, there are lots of
examples.
examples.
Particularly favors an incumbent against anybody else.
So are we making any sort of decision, or is there
No, this
anything
is
we
a
need to decide on
discussion
right now?
and food for thought for next time. And again, we're doing it at a meeting because it's a public policy issue. And the committee cannot have policy issue discussions by email. We can only do administrative stuff by email. And so that's why we have to have this policy open-ended discussion here. But I'm open to go as long as you guys, but I'm also tired because it's 9:30.
Yeah.
I wanted to make one last comment about it, which is this is not the only committee that would operate independently if this were approved. As I understand, you also have, I mean, it would not be the only.
This is not the only contract.
The contract. It's not the only contract that's handled directly by the other contracts, I believe, are with the auditor, the accountant, the attorney. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the IT forensic guy that you hired a few years back.
Okay.
In
which case, the village manager is not involved in the implementation of the contract. He may develop do the contract management, but the actual contract implementation, the project management, is done elsewhere by other experts in your
Or the
No,
audit,
no,
the audit has
no,
to be independent, Arthur.
I don't think that's
I
right.
manage the audit process.
Yeah, but you don't tell the auditor what to do. You give the auditor data.
Yeah, but yeah,
The auditor's report has to be independent or it's meaningless.
yeah.
And independent elections, I think, are equally important for good government. Independent audits, independent elections, those are the two bedrocks.
But we still have very tight and close interactions with the
Well,
auditor.
yeah, and I think that the election committee always should work closely with the village manager and keep him completely informed, not just because we like him, but because he's really helpful. But that doesn't mean he's in the chain of command any more than he's in the chain of command in writing the audit report. He gives the auditor a lot of data, right? But you don't write the report. Michael, do you?
I'm somehow missing the point here, but
Okay.
All right, well, I don't want to
Yeah.
belabor it because it is late. Mike Zielinski, let's check in with you. Have you any thoughts you want to add here?
No, I think this has been hashed around a lot, and I
Yep.
think we all understand the arguments on each side, and we're going to probably recommend that those yellowed things be eliminated, and I suspect I know the outcome of that.
Well, I hope the council
Yeah,
members will consider
yeah,
I didn't
that.
know the arguments on both sides before today, so thank you all for sharing your
thank you.
perspective.
Jack,
And I
thank
will
you.
send around the administrative document that sort of outlines all the controls of the election committee, because I think that would be helpful just to
All
document
right,
that.
Mark.
Michael, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I
Michael,
just wanted
yes.
to say, Jack, as the newest member of this committee, thank you for these questions. I think asking them in the calm manner that you have tonight has kind of been very revealing. And
Yes.
it's gotten to the crux of the conflict here that has been kind of plaguing Martin's editions since I've been here, but since before I've been here, there's a lack of trust on both sides. And I have been racking my brain about how to heal this community. And I don't know that we've gotten any closer tonight, but at least we have a pretty clear understanding amongst us. So thank you.
And
Thanks.
thank you, Michael, for all of your patience and helpfulness in trying to help us resolve this, because it's a structural issue. And again, we think the world of you. Let me just be clear about that again. And your integrity has never been in question, not for an iota. Anything else on this? Are we wrapping it up? Okay. I have only one other thing. We have 5, 6, and 7 on our action list. I don't have much progress to report on the election instruction manual simply because I haven't had time to do a whole lot more. So I'll get back to you. That's administrative. We can deal with that on email. And thank you, Jack, again for the chat GPT outline. Our committee report for the November 20 council meeting will basically report on where we are now and say that we will give the council our recommendations as regarding the 26th election at their December meeting. So that's a short report. The November report is not long, and we could do that administratively. The only other election issues that I had on my list that might need attention is the election committee page on the website. And I know, Mike Zielinski, this was an issue that you and I had talked about earlier. We had talked about how it's hard to find stuff there. When I went back to look at previous regs, I realized that in January, last year's committee said that election committee page on the website should get reorganized a little bit to be clearer and make things easier to find. And we didn't follow up on that. So we probably should. And with the committee's consent tonight, what I'd like to do is talk to Mike Zielinski about how he thinks that could be better organized. And Mike, if you and I can take on that little job, that's an administrative.
Marty, we actually listened to Mike's comments last month, and Michael Sullivan and I have talked about making some of these changes to make like, for example, the election regulations, where are they, to make them more easy to find.
Sounds like we're on the same page then. Yeah. So Michael Sullivan, thank you. And with the committee's consent, unless anyone objects, I'm going to ask Mike Z to work with me to sort of get back to you, and we'll work together on seeing what we can do. Yes.
Well,
good with you, Jack?
I will say the one thing I had mentioned in the letter or memo, whatever you call it, that I wrote last year, I was flabbergasted when I went to the village website and tried to find the election regs. I was led all over the place, and there were a lot of things out there. There was 21, there was 20, and then it referenced something else, and then you went back and you found that, but that was from 1920. It was very strange. So I
We
think
can do
there's some
better.
things to look at in straightening out the website stuff.
Well, it sounds like we have a consensus, not just on the election committee, but also on the staff and council. So go ahead and see what we can do.
Okay.
And other than that, I think that was it for my list for tonight. And I'm assuming I'll have jot down any questions that come to mind over the next week, to talk to the attorney about. And if we need to, we may not need to. But I want to thank everybody for a really thoughtful meeting tonight, and I appreciate you all so much. And
Any assignments, Marty?
well, the assignment for me is to draft up our November election committee report for the council, which I'll get to
Right.
you guys,
Okay,
and to put together that little list of sort of like what are the various, operational controls on the election committee to make assuage
Right.
some fears.
okay. Mhm.
That's the two committee assignments I have. Mike Z and I are going to take a look with Michael Silliman's help,
On the website.
on the website, how we can maybe, clean up that page a little bit. Anything else? Jack, you're going to
Um,
continue to be our guru on the IT stuff.
You wanted a paragraph on other budgets.
Oh, yes, Mike, thank you.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to forget that. The paragraph, Mike Z will do a paragraph for us to approve administratively on what elections cost elsewhere.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Thanks,
and-
Marty, for
and that
all the work
operation-
keeping us on track.
Oh, I tried.
Elizabeth, thanks for the meeting minutes, and
Yeah.
Mike, thanks for
Oh,
being our
sure.
designated researcher.
Yes. And Elizabeth, what were you going to say?
No, I was just gonna say, that's quite a bit already, but if there's any time that we get one step further along with our procedures manual, that,
I will continue to work on
When
that.
we
I
have the
pledge to
draft up.
continue
yeah,
to give that my attention. And
Yeah.
again, that's administrative, so we can do that,
Yes.
by email. And,
Yeah.
all
Okay.
markups and edits are always welcome. You all know that. Anything I said, you guys, feel free to edit. The more brains, the better.
Okay.
My mother-in-law used to say, there just ain't no substitute for brains. So thank you all for being such wonderful, smart people. Anything else?
okay. No,
I'm also just very impressed with how much you all care and all of your understanding of how this village works. As somebody who's brand new, I got a lot to learn.
Well, we're glad to have you.
you have great questions, Mike. Excuse me, Jack.
Jack.
Yeah, you just have, you have a
Beauty of having little knowledge is it makes way
clarity.
for great questions.
Yes. Cut to the
It makes for a
chase.
great team. It really does. I could not be happier with this team, and I thank you all so much for caring. I mean, you're right, Jack. I think we really do care. And it's a small village, but democracy is really precious, as I think we're all coming to realize even more at the national level. And the opportunity to do things well means a lot. It means a lot to do things right, to do things well, and
Yes.
to protect voting rights matters. So, thank you. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, please say
favor.
aye.
Aye.